I thought on this video we could talk about the inconsolable child within ourselves. And I'm cautious to use the phrase inner child because that has taken on a particular meaning and a shorthand assumption of what we're talking about. And I'm specifically referring to these experiences where we regress. There's an age regression that shows up in our relationships, and this could be partner, romantic relationship, family, with friends. These experiences that we feel triggered, and then the resulting trigger is a state of mind that we feel maybe helpless. We feel flooded, overwhelmed, consumed with wanting to get comfort, and we can't. Thus, the word inconsolable. And for many of us, this links to attachment trauma. This is the legacy of our attachment wounds. And that when there's a series of events or stressors where our attachment needs are not being taken care of, they're thwarted, they're diminished, they're ignored, they're compromised, it's very possible that we are going to respond as if we're in a childlike state. And this can be very overwhelming and frustrating and embarrassing because oftentimes clients that I work with, also, in my own experience, we still retain this awareness of I'm not 5, I'm not 6, I'm not a helpless child. I have other resources. I have other experiences in history where relationship conflict and dialogue, and not getting needs met go a little more smoothly, or I can handle it, we can handle it. And yet there are these times in relationship where we can't handle it. And what I want to try to capture is how very provocative there's an electric and edginess to this intensity of feeling very much triggered, overwhelmed. Sometimes I use the word on fire. Sometimes I use the phrase, there's poison in my nervous system, in my bloodstream. There's an electric vibrating that really cuts to the core. Some of us experience it as pure, raw fear. Why am I talking about this? Why is this important? It's not something to just skip over and get through, or just feel better. And it's really illuminating the attachment wound, the history of the wound. So the invitation is not so much to diminish it, but to be able to have the skill to show up for ourselves, learn from it, and work with it. And chances are that if you have a history of this, it's not going away anytime soon. I'm 54 years old, and both I see in clients and in my own history that given the right circumstance, the right set of ingredients, I call it a mental health cocktail. And if you, it's almost like that the straw that breaks the camel's back, which what this means is just one more stressor, one more thing that collectively together creates this cocktail that influences our mental health to the point where we're going to feel activated. And our attachment system sends off an alarm of emergency. And we're trying to be in relationship in those moments. And oftentimes what happens when it's not only that we feel like we are the inconsolable child, it's like we become the inconsolable child. Now, this can be really hard and challenging if you want and expect your partner, a family member, a friend to show up as your parent and take care of you. Perfectly reasonable that you want some degree of acknowledgement and someone who offers empathy, and where you can have, if you really have a connection and a shared experience where the other person is available and listening. It's called attunement. You have an attuned experience where you really feel seen, because what is the activating triggering thing is that you're not feeling seen, you're ignored, you're in some way just completely being diminished or not acknowledged for what is important to you. And oftentimes, the person who is doing the triggering is the person that we want to help us work through the trigger, which is almost equally challenging, if not a setup for failure. Because if they had the skill to do this or realized how much they're doing it, they most probably wouldn't have triggered, the behavior anyway. Now, this also happens when there's not even an actual event or trigger. It's like perceived, comes back to that mental health cocktail and all the ingredients. I mean, we could just have life stressors pile up, and that we perceive that not, we're not being valued, we're not being seen, we're not being understood or consulted, for someone to ask questions to show curiosity for who we are, and that we are undernourished when it comes to emotional connection, that we've just gone way too long of not having our attachment needs met. And at some point, again, like the straw and the camel's back, we just reach a place where we can't handle it anymore. And sometimes when the inconsolable child activates, there's an implosion, a diminishing of our scope of ability to have perspective. It becomes very myopic. And some of us act out in a tantrum. Some of us feel big, hot energy and we get loud. And then we can also think in terms of extreme opposite. Some of us just shut down and we become catatonic. We become very quiet. We might enter like a dissociative state, and we just numb out. And if you're with a partner who doesn't realize what this is and why it's happening, and or even understand how it gets triggered, from the outside looking in, it could be very confusing. And even it's possible that someone who doesn't understand what is happening can look at this situation, can look at you and think, "Wow, you're unpredictable," or "You're extreme," or "Boy, this is really immature." And immature is a tricky word here, because these feelings that are getting activated certainly are coming from a younger experience and needs not being met. And that when we attempted through our history, generally through childhood for most of us, that when your attachment needs were not fully met, you became insecure in the sense of like you didn't really fully believe that your needs were going to be acknowledged in the future. And we developed these adaptive strategies, these adaptive responses to try to get our needs met, and then they wouldn't be met. And when that didn't work, we oftentimes punished ourselves, shamed ourselves, judged ourselves for even having needs, or we did something in a way that's more inward focused. Something outward focused is that we tried even harder to get our needs met. So we were more demanding, louder, creating somewhat of of a very expressive, like, see me, see me, see me. Aren't you paying attention? Um, we're I'm the classification of behaviors I'm talking about have a rather extreme presentation. You might be judged for, wow, you're really creating a lot of drama. You might be judged for, wow, you really are needy. And with you and me in this moment, at least to like enter that place of compassion, of like, this is really hard stuff. And it's not that we're doing it because we just want to create some extreme and confuse the other person and demand our needs be met, or that feeling you can't control when you shut down. Like you try to it's like you're trying to communicate, you're trying to reach out, you're trying to turn towards, say, "Hey, friend, hey, partner, hey, family member. I'm really hoping that we can connect here. And when it doesn't happen and you feel so misunderstood, there's this mechanism that it just implodes. You shut down. And then my experience is that I'm coaching myself saying, come on, turn back on. Don't shut down. Don't shut, stay with it. Stay in the present moment. And we can't. And usually then there's this big flood of adrenaline. That's the, what I call the poison in my veins. It feels so edgy and hurtful and scary. And this idea of the inconsolable child is the image of a child in a crib and the child's crying. And the whole point of crying through, the most basic sense of evolution or communication, the child's crying to say, notice me, and I need attention, and I need some care, and come on, get up and walk over to the crib and pick me up and give me a hug. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you can feel the sadness of just seeing a child in a crib who no one comes. No, there's no one answers the cry. No one answers the call. So as an adult, if you've had any experience like that, and it doesn't have to be the literally not acknowledged when crying, we had a number of developmental experiences emotionally where we might not have been crying like a child in a crib, but we were reaching out, some very important emotional need to connect and be acknowledged through relationship. And it's as if you're still in the crib crying and no one shows up. And so we live with this sense, this belief, this history, this memory. Let's call it an imprint. Like there's an imprint in our mind that says not everybody's going to show up. We're not going to. There's going to be times as an adult where you're still stuck in that crib. Now, that's interesting language because we say, well, wait a minute, I'm an adult. I'm not in a crib. I'm not a child. Well, that's what happens in this trigger. The wound folded into our development and our sense of self and our attachment system, our nervous system, the way that attunement takes place and that we experience connection. That is a neurological superhighway that also carries the wound with it. There's not like two separate neurological highways. It's the same pathway that's communicating the connection, the attunement, the attachment bond, the quality of feeling warmth and trust and safety, and simultaneously in that same neural network in your brain and your experience of your body also is that fear, and the attachment trauma lives in that same system of that you have some history, some knowledge, some memory, either conscious or subconscious, that your needs were not met. And the longing, the cry of the child in the crib, and it is a cry that goes unanswered. I have a neighbor who has a child. I've not met this neighbor and I've not seen the child, but the child is of an age, probably age 2, age 3, and every so often screams. It really lights up my nervous system. It is not an enjoyable experience. I am not a parent. I am aware because I've had a similar experience. I went to a restaurant. It was an outdoor patio, and I also heard a child like so crying, like I thought like, I thought like a dog must be biting this child's hand. It sounded, and then when I look over at the loving family, and the father was picking up the little boy, and he's trying to soothe it. It's like, like the boy's French fry fell on the floor. But for this child, that was like the end of the world. But what the reason why I share the story of my neighbor, like I hear that scream and that cry, it makes me think of that in a way, as adults, we still have that cry inside of us. And I'm slightly made a joke, or it was, the punchline of that story was the French fry fell on the floor, but and sounds arbitrary. I'm not talking about silly things like that, but I'm more moving in this place of, um, even regardless of our age, our sophistication, our success, or our skill level, to mask this deep longing and this cry, this silent cry, uh, that might have layers and layers of suffering, of loss, of disappointment, of grief, that goes unacknowledged, or that you're invisible. The people around you that you care about, and the others in your life do care about you, but they don't show it very much. And so you feel invisible, or you're just not acknowledged. And to experience that over a lifetime is incredibly painful. And many of us then live with this child cry, this silent cry inside of us, but we never let it out. It's subconscious, and we've developed all these ways. In fact, the ways that we've developed to mask it is addiction and substances, and entertainment, distraction, shopping, overly excitable happiness, workaholism, also just deflecting irritation towards others, creating road rage and aggression. All of this stuff, this aggression, is this cry inside of us is not being acknowledged. And some of us who have a history of attachment injuries, attachment wounds, attachment trauma, we might visit this intensity, this place where the silent cry does not get masked as much, and it pops up into our realm of consciousness. It shows up in our behavior, or it takes hold of us and pulls us down under. And it's scary when that happens. For some of us, it's embarrassing, and it's very hard to work with it when we're in the moment and it's happening. I want to expand a little bit, just this idea of, there's a lot of, over talk, or uh, many opinions on this inner child idea as an exercise, as a way to personify parts of yourself, and you engage in that part that feels younger. If that doesn't work for you, and even, this inconsolable child idea, I'm trying to capture a collective image, what we would say an archetype of that. This is something that's universal. And we can begin to even create other experiences. We have the inconsolable child, we have the abandoned child, we have the neglected child, um, we have the that experience of the lost child who just doesn't belong. And and the word child here, we don't have to really, if this isn't resonating with you, in the archetypal sense, what this means is it captures child means that part of you, that core place of tenderness, of of deep innocence and purity. And do you know how a child, like when a child wants connection, or wants to be hugged, or wants to be picked up, the child lifts up its arms, and there's a very natural sense of reaching for. And What we need then in that situation, if it's in a parent-child scenario, we need the parent to turn towards and to respond in a complementary way. If the child reaches up, the parent also reaches out. I'm speaking both in metaphor, but also literally. Sometimes this is an emotional reaching and an emotional responding. Other times it's literally, no, I need a hug. Come over here, you give me a hug. Our innocence, the most tender part of ourselves becomes frightened that it's unwelcome in relationship, it's unwelcome in the world, and that we return to this feeling of overwhelm. The attachment system enters an alarm. There's an emergency feeling that for some of it, it's like, I'm gonna die here. And we know this is true. The primal panic, the feeling connected through evolution, feeling that your tribe, your people, you know where you belong, that you can look out and you can orient and derive safety through the connection of those around you. If that's interrupted and you look out, you reach up and there's no one to reach back, that is a sense of great panic. And those of us with attachment injuries, have that particular experience of an inconsolable child who can't get their attachment needs met. That state of mind shows up when we're practicing intimacy and vulnerability with those that we care about. Sometimes it shows up unrelated to the other person. It's a perceived fear. Other times it shows up because the other person did do something carelessly, and there's a range of perhaps callously. Other times we're just with someone who does not have the skill to join us at the depth of connection that we long for. And we're stuck in this inconsolable child place of waiting to be saved, waiting for some attention and acceptance that just doesn't show up. I have more videos to make about this, which move into more stories, move into exploring, well, how do we work with this? I made this video because I want to break down, try to capture through offering you empathy for all of us, and to begin to normalize that this happens for many of us who have some history of attachment wounds. And the more we can talk about it, the more we could practice finding language for it. And many of us lose our language ability when it's activated. But we need to begin to think about, well, how do I soothe myself? How do I find other connections of people who could mirror back to me my fear and that I do need some connection? How do we pay attention to our body and use some grounding exercises and techniques to make sure that we don't dissociate? And this is all about trauma, having skills to work with trauma. So this video is trying to capture what this feels like. And I'm in the process of hopefully soon making more videos to continue to move into what it means to experience yourself as the inconsolable child or the abandoned child or the neglected child. Thank you for listening. See you next time.